Chair Ellis and members of the committee, let's talk about the post-election audit process. In your packet, I believe you have information of what we hand out to the State Board of Canvassers when we roll dice for the post-election audit, including, I think in that packet was the administrative rules and also the law from the post-election audit. So background on the post-election audit. It was put in place by Senate Bill 155 during the 2009 legislature. There was a minor edit in 2011, but it's functionally been acting the same ever since. We've been doing the post-election audit since 2009 for every federal election. Post-election audit provides a quality control method to check that the tabulators used to count votes have done their job. So it's really a double check that the tabulators have done their job in counting the ballots accurately and the way that we expect the tabulators to do that. The start of the process is where the State Board of Canvassers, which is the AG, OPI, and the state auditor, meet between 7 to 9 days after the election, and we roll dice. And we select races and precincts. If you want to watch this very entertaining and lengthy process, we did broadcast this last time for the primary, and it's up on the legislative website. It's riveting television, I'd let me tell you. The random selection is one statewide race, one federal race, one statewide ballot issue, if any, and these are if-anys. And each county is selected one precinct out of their county, randomly selected, and the counties with larger amounts of precincts have additional precincts that they are selected. For example, Yellowstone County has like 52 precincts, and they actually have 3 precincts out of those 52 that are randomly selected. The boards roll dice. Literally, they put dice in a cup, they shake it, and they roll it out onto the tray, and then they read the number. And that dice determines the random selection of both of the county precinct, and then it also determines if that precinct has a competitive legislative race in it. And if there's more than one competitive legislative race, you actually roll dice to see which one you're going to hand count. The next step is that after the Board of Canvass does those random selections, we put that information up on the web. We also then send that out to the county election administrators involved with the audit. And then the counties that are involved with the audit will then go and do the audit. So how are you a county that is involved with the audit? You have to be having tabulators. So you use tabulators. If you hand count, you don't involved with the audit. So there's 10 counties that hand count. There was 11 last time, Lincoln County. As you well know, the ballots were, I think, a quarter inch too short, cut by the printer, and went feed through the tabulator, so they ended up counting all of their ballots by hand count. Also, if the county has a potential recount, in any race in the county, there's some exceptions for precinct committee people in the primary, but generally if there's a recount race in the county where they're going to have to recount that race anyway, they're exempted statutorily from participating in the post-election audit. There was 5 counties that were exempted this time. 4 of them were involved in the recount, PSC 5, and the other one was involved in some local race recounts. So 40 of the counties, of the 56 counties, actually performed the post-election audit this time. The post-election audit at the county level starts with the county governing board appointing 3 people, or the audit committee. In the audit committee, the qualifications and statute are a list of county employees or residents that have indicated they were willing to serve on the audit committee. You cannot serve on that audit committee if you served as an election judge during the election, you are employed by the vendor that made the tabulator, or you're employed and done maintenance on that tabulator. So basically, nobody involved with election judges can't be on the audit committee, and you can't have the vendor people on the audit committee either. So the audit committee gets together with the election administrator and goes through the process. And what they do is they take the precinct out, take the ballots for the precinct that's been randomly selected, and for the races that have been randomly selected, they get those ballots out and they hand count the race. And they go through the hand count process. Now, there is a little bit of nuance because you're trying to count it like the tabulators count it. So which is a little different than a recount, because recount is you're doing voter intent. And so voters who don't follow the instructions and actually like circle, instead of filling out the bubble, that would be picked up during a regular recount. But for a post-election audit, you're counting like the tabulator would see it. And so tabulator, if somebody lightly, indicates not filling out the bubble, that vote is there, or they have other things that could potentially not be counted, those ones are explainable differences. And those indications, what you're looking for is what the tabulator would count when you run it through the machine. And that's probably the biggest difference between a regular hand count and the post-election audit hand count. However, again, what you're trying to do is a quality control check on the tabulator. Is the tabulator counting the ballots like you expect them to do? And statutorily, the post-election audit is done a day before, has to be done a day before the counting canvass. And where the law sets what's significant is 5 votes. So if there's a 5-vote difference, or in counties that have larger numbers of people in the precinct where you're counting more votes, you look at the 0.5%. So for example, you'd have to have a precinct that's 1,000 votes to get something over 0.5%. Yellowstone County, their largest precinct that they hand counted was 2,220 ballots. And for that, you have to get to the 0.5%, you would have to have more than 11 vote difference between what the tabulator had and what you hand counted. So this is where I've had some confusion from questions where people have said, oh, it's 5 votes and the percentage, and it's like whichever is greater. And what you're really looking is for something statistically significant that says that tabulator is not doing what you expect. So if you find that, and it's not an explainable difference, then by law, the county has to count 3 more precincts for races. And those precincts are also randomly selected by the canvass board when we did it. So we selected an initial precinct and then 3 more precincts out of that county. If that same issue occurs in those 3 precincts, in the first issue, you take the tabulator out of service, and it has to be examined and can't be used for another election until it's examined by a software expert, basically examined and figured out why it's not doing its job. The other thing is, if you see this, then under the statute that empowers the county canvass board, there's actually an area where they can, based on this discrepancy, petition for a recount. So the canvass board, they're saying, hey, post-election audit is showing something's going on. They can go in and say, yep, let's petition, we're gonna recount this, because something is going on with this tabulator. So the post-election audit is really, not only with all the stuff that we do, the counties do public testing, pre-testing of the tabulators, day of testing. This is after the election testing, and it really is that great quality control to make sure the tabulators have done what you expect them to do. So the races in this primary that were recounted were the U.S. representative races, Supreme Court Justice No. 1 race, and then 17 counties had competitive legislative races. Post-election audit says, if you don't have a competitive race, we're not recounting it. So you have to have competitive races, and there was only 17 counties with precincts with competitive legislative races. The results of the audit were no county had more than a 5-vote unexplainable difference in the tabulated amount and the hand count amount. Only 6 counties reported any difference, but still less than 5 votes, and those were Cascade, Granite, Park, Ravalli, Rosebud, and Valley. So nobody in the post-election audit reported any unexplainable difference greater than 5 votes. So in conclusion, the Post-Election Audit Act has served Montana well since 2009 and is a great way to have transparency in elections and a great quality control check to make sure the tabulators are doing what we expect them to do. So, questions?
Any questions for Mr. Fuller? Senator Kerry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Fuller, once the dice is cast, and I know that's a public event, the ballots have already been locked up, correct?
Senator Chair Ellis, Senator Kerry, that's correct. So the ballots are sealed, and they can only be after the election, and they can only be unsealed and looked at for two reasons. One is to resolve provisional ballots, and the second is for the post-election audit, and then at the county canvas.
So the counties know, excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Follow up.
The counties know the time frame is within 3 days after the dice is cast. They have a heads up for the 3 days before the canvass board comes to them. Is that correct?
Chair Ellis, Senator Kerry, it really depends on the county, because the county is scheduling their canvass as they have availability and within the statutory limits. So we roll dice, and this time we rolled dice on day 7, which is the Tuesday. They have, I believe, 14 days to start their canvass. So they could start their canvass on day 8 after we roll dice. I mean, not the canvass, they can do their post-election audit. The soonest would be day 8, and then they could have their canvass on day 9. Typically, counties will do the post-election audit just right the day before they do their canvass.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Representative Cordum.
Madam Chair, Mr. Fuller, can you define or describe the canvass process in this context?
Chair Ellis, Representative Cordum. So the county canvass is the place where the county examines the results from the election administrator for the election, looks at ballots, looks at the tally sheets, look at the things from the tabulators, and then certifies the results. And then after they certify the results, if there's state races involved, they would send that result of their county canvass to the Secretary of State's office, and then we use those for the state canvass.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Dooling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Fuller, so if a county uses multiple tabulators and there's a discrepancy over the 5 votes or 0.5%, how do you know which tabulator is wonky?
So, Chair Ellis, Representative Dooling, the county should be keeping track of which tabulators are used for which precincts. If they're running parts of precincts through multiple tabulators, then you would have to assume that both tabulators were having that issue, and you would have to take both tabulators out of service and then have them inspected.
Anything else? I have one question for you, Mr. Fuller, and I know that there is an exemption for counties that have recounts. So because the audit has to take place within 7 or 8 days, can you just remind me, is that the time frame that counties, that recounts challenges has to occur so you know whether you have to do an audit or not?
Chair Ellis, so the law states potential recounts. And so where we get into potential recounts and how the timing is set up is that Monday after the election is where provisional ballots are finally counted and any outstanding UOCAVA ballots. So they should have all of the results from any outstanding provisionals or UOCAVAs that afternoon of Monday, after 3 o'clock on Monday, and then any county that's in a potential recount status at that point would not be exempted from post-election audit. The recount, you can't actually, under the recount statute in Chapter 16, states you can't petition for a recount until after the county canvass for a county race, and you can't petition for a legislative or a statewide race until the state canvass. And the only ones that are automatic is a tie. Otherwise, a candidate has to petition for that recount if it's allowed, if they're within that percentage.